Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 5 of GGBO 2023, and in this episode we're going to take that great big heavy block of wood that we've laminated for the central section of the guitar and cut away a lot of the material that we don't need anymore. So we left off last time with this in clamps. It's been sat a couple of days actually. I've just been too busy and it's been quite hot here recently, so I haven't really spent a lot of time in the shed. This is the top section and it's a little bit proud on there, so that needs bringing down so it's all level. This is the back. I'm not going to worry about that because I'm going to have to take some of this thickness off because at present this blank is way too thick. In terms of this blank in general, we need to lose quite a lot of it because A, it's obviously the wrong shape, and B, it's very heavy. I've just weighed this together with the two wings and they're coming in at about 6 kilos. So that's about 12-ish pounds. So way too heavy. There's obviously a lot of maple in here, a lot of weight. So we need to do something about that. However, once we kind of put the correct taper onto this neck section, we will lose a fair proportion of this material. The other issue we have is that I want this central section to be about 100 mil. We are currently around about 106, 107 mil. So we need to take a little bit off. The bridge is 95 mil wide, so 100 mil will leave us a nice little margin around that. However, there is another option because as of yet, I haven't really cleaned up these wings to any extent. What I could actually do is take a little bit of material off the base of these wings to bring it down to the dimensions that I want without having to thin this down. So we've got options there, and as is the way I like to work, if I've got an option, I will leave it as long as I can before I take that option away from myself. So for the time being, what I'm going to do is get this top section level, get everything nice and cleaned up, and then we can start to think about laying this blank out in terms of where the bridge is going to go, where the nut's going to be, where the fingerboard's going to sit, where we might want our pickup, etc, etc. So I'll get this in the vise, I'll break out a plane and we'll see if we can get this cleaned up. Okay, and there's that centre section all nicely cleaned up. There was a tiny little bit of tear out in some of these sections, so I've just gone over it with a hand plane and cleaned all of that out. And I have to say, I think that is looking very nice. The black lines are subtle next to that mahogany, but they are kind of visible. And I think once we get some finish on this, they'll probably pop a little bit more. So very happy with that. So next up, we need to think about laying this out in terms of all the vital components of the build. So we need to get that drawing out again. Okay, so happily, with all the bits placed onto the plan, everything fits. So we've got enough material, which is amazing, exactly what we wanted. So we can get rid of those two bits for the time being. And I'm just going to mark where those wings meet. I'm going to square those lines up to the top. I'll draw this line in straight. I know it's a radius, but I just want to find the approximate end of the body so I can work from that point. And if I just look at that, I think if we add 2 millimeters on, that will give us the true end of the body. So we'll square that across. And from there, on the drawing, we're showing 211 mil. From that point to where the bridge needs to start. Obviously these are just layout lines for the time being. This can be fine-tuned once we actually start to fit components. So in theory, that is one end of my scale length. So the next trick, and it was at this point in the proceedings when I pulled the phone I was recording my vocal audio on, off the shelf, broke the jack socket off my lapel mic and made it not work anymore. So you will notice a change in the audio quality. I apologise for that. Normal service will resume as soon as I can get a replacement. Is to mark where we would like our knot line to be. Now I'm going 24 3/4. I did think about making it 25.5, but I decided I'm going to go with the Gibson scale length. So in theory, that's our knot line, this is our bridge, and that's our fingerboard. I'm obviously going to come a little bit further with this because I'm going to add another couple of frets on, and we'll also need a little bit of meat at the end of the fretboard, which leaves us with this space for our pickup to go into, which is more than adequate. One point about the pickup position is these bridges work on 2 posts, which are obviously drilled into here. Now what can happen if you put your pickup too close to the position of those posts, you're not really left with much material between the post hole and the pickup route, and with some heavy use of this you're putting a lot of stress onto those posts. They can collapse into the pickup route. So what I'm probably going to do is I'll just kind of adjust my pickup position ever so slightly forward, just to leave me a little bit more material in there, just keep a little bit more strength there. I think the multi-laminate nature of this neck will help with that, because the transition from one laminate to another will help alleviate any stress points or fractures that might occur. But I don't want to leave it to chance. I do actually think that that will be a benefit though, because I fully plan to operate without a neck pickup on this one. So that position slightly that way will give it a slightly mellower tone, which in this situation won't be necessarily a bad thing. And with that knot line now marked, we can actually mark in where we want the break angle to be for our headstock. And that's just a case of marking how thick this locking nut is. I'm actually going to come beyond that just a little way, because you always lose a bit of material when you clean these surfaces up. So I'll just come that little bit further. At the end of the day, if the transition is a little bit after that nut, it really doesn't matter, but I wouldn't want it before the end of the nut, so we'll go with that there. I'll just continue that around both sides. And I'm going to go with a 10-degree angle, just there. And just mark that angle in. So with that marked in, we can now get this to the bandsaw and get the first of our cuts done. And that's that cut and cleaned up back to the line. That's kind of spot on where I want it, and it's all looking very nice. So next up, we need to put the thickness on the headstock itself. It needs to be about 14mm finish, so I'm going to make this, I'm going to cut it at 15mm, just to leave a little bit of extra material on. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to put a veneer on the headstock. That depends, I suppose, on what the headstock looks like, and we don't know that yet, so I'm just going to mark this out for the time being at 15mm. I'm going to stop well short of the nut line, because obviously we need to leave a little bit of material in there for our volute, because it will be having one. but I can kind of cut all of this material away now and kind of complete this area at least before we head back down to the body end of things and start working out exactly how thick we want this. So again, back to the bandsaw and get this cut off. Okay, so having got the headstock thickness, we can then move back down to the body and get this nearer its final dimensions. If you're wondering about the change of t-shirt, I've just been in for a brew and I've had to change the other one because it's absolutely roasting in the shed today. It's about 31 degrees outside, Celsius, I don't know what that is in freedom height, but it is very, very warm today, so change of shirt necessary. Now, to get this body down to thickness, the limiting factor is the depth of the tremolo system, because obviously we need this to be at such a depth that it can move without the block or the springs interfering on the back plate. The tremolo system is going to be recessed as well because this is perfectly straight. So the strings are going to be the thickness of the fretboard and the action above here. So if we just plonk that on top of the body, the saddles would be too high and we wouldn't be able to get an action. So I'm going to recess this in. Now the information that I have indicates that the route where it mounts is about 6.75 mil deep. However, I'm not totally sure how that affects where the base of the tremolo sits. If we assume that the base sits right at the bottom of that route, which I don't think is the case, but we'll use that for worst case scenario, we've got another 37 mil depth for this tremolo block, which gives us 43 mil. I also want to have a flush fitting rear cavity cover. If I can, that would be very nice. So we need to add a few millimeters on for that as well. So realistically, we're looking at 45 millimeters for the thickness of this body, which is kind of pretty standard width really for a lot of guitars. I'll set my gauge up to 45 mil and get this marked out. Okay, so there we go, back to the bandsaw and just get this waste removed. And this little section I will save because I can use this to create the cover for the trem cavity once we get to that stage. And I think that'll be a nice little finishing touch for it. So that's the body thickness, and I can already feel this is starting to be a lot lighter, which is great. So the next thing we need to do is mark in some kind of approximate measurements for the taper of the neck. It doesn't have to be kind of too accurate at this point, but it'll just be nice to get rid of this great big lump of timber that's on the back of it at the moment. So to do that, we're going to need our trusty fretboard template. We'll get that lined up at the nut line, and we'll mark in positions of the 1st and the 12th frets. And square them across. Now, unlike a lot of my guitars, I don't want this to have a particularly chunky neck. Obviously this is kind of supposed to be a shred guitar, so I want it to have quite a slim neck profile. So I'm going to mark this one at 21mm at the first fret. That's leaving a little bit of extra material on for cleanup, and I'm going to go 23mm for the 12th fret, which is there. I'll mark that in. We also want a volute on this, so I'm going to just kind of leave a bunch of extra material on there. It's probably way too much at this stage, but we can get rid of that. I'm not quite sure where my heel transition is going to be, so I'll err well on the side of safety. And I'll come there, which is kind of around about the 13th fret, so there's way more material there than we actually need, but I can always take more out. I can't put more back on. Okay, so again, we'll get this onto the bandsaw and get this thinned down. Okay, so there's the neck profile thinned down, something like, and I can already feel this is an awful lot lighter than it was. We do still need to take that off, but I'm not going to do that until I've got the wings somewhere near, and we need to kind of obviously thin this down to the proper profile along the top of the neck, but I'm not going to do that until we've got the truss rod installed, and we need to cut down and shape where the headstock's going to go. However, I don't know what that shape is yet going to be. So the next logical step for me would be to establish that headstock shape, get it cut out and get it shaped. However, that's going to be quite a lot of work, so I'm going to leave that to the next episode. So I'll leave this one here and I'll be back in a couple of days' time when we'll get the pencil and tracing paper out again and try and establish a nice looking headstock shape. So until then, don't forget to smash that like button if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.